Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Investors Money Matrix podcast. I'm your host, Scott Ulmer. I have a special episode I want to share with you today, really based on what's going on in our world regarding real estate. And the headline or the topic of today is foreclosures, pre-foreclosures. How do you find them? What does it mean? What are the differences? And really, how do you capitalize on an REO, real estate owned, or property that is truly foreclosed, and can you catch it before then, and what does that look like? I'm just going to share a couple kind of tidbits I think are going to be very valuable. So let me start off by kind of giving you a snapshot in time. And so we are currently in March of 2022, and over the prior 2 years, as the entire world knows, we've been in a pandemic. Well, during the pandemic, as most folks in the United States know, there was a moratorium placed on all foreclosures and all evictions. And that simply meant that if you were a tenant that was in a rental property and you couldn't make your payment for whatever reason, the landlord could not pursue an eviction. So there was a moratorium on eviction. So you had people that certainly took advantage of that, but in many cases, it helped people stay in their homes. And obviously, there was a lot of uncertainty in the early days of the pandemic, and the moratorium was a peace of mind for a lot of people. The same held true for foreclosures. So foreclosure is where somebody is in a home, they have a mortgage with a bank, they're behind on their payments. A pre-foreclosure is when they are usually 2 or 3 payments behind. There's typically some form of notification, an NOD or notice of default. A lis pendens is another word or Latin phrase for it down in Florida, which is something that typically is put on public record, notifying that there's delinquencies in the payments and that the mortgagor or has intent to foreclose on the property. And that usually is designed to kind of shake people up and hopefully get them to make their payments. And so a pre-foreclosure is that scenario where the owner of the property who has a mortgage is behind at least 2 or 3 payments. And then, of course, every month one payment goes by, there's late fees, penalties, interest, and those accrue very quickly. And in some cases, you get 5, 6 payments behind. It's really hard to catch that up because there's so much stuff laid on top of the payment aside from the payment itself. And in some ways, it becomes a lose-lose scenario for the occupant or the owner of the property. By the way, I also throw in the forbearance in the equation. Forbearances are where a lender will allow the buyer to or the borrower to hold off on making payments, sometimes 3 payments in a row. And in some forbearances, then after the 3rd payment into the 4th payment, you have to make all 4 payments at once. And in that case, you're setting people up for failure. In fact, I've talked to a lot of folks in kind of the REO foreclosure, pre-foreclosure world, and they've all kind of said the same, that forbearances typically just don't work out, and it's usually setting the buyer up for a failure at the end of the day. And so you have these pre-foreclosures, you have forbearances, the moratorium was lifted, moratorium was in place for evictions and foreclosures, and after the kind of the tail end of the pandemic, the moratorium was lifted. So just a few months ago, in fact, it was interesting. There were several variations, and there were always seemingly these loopholes where certain evictions or foreclosures could get through. But as a whole, everything was pretty much paused until the end of 2021. So you have this backlog of folks that haven't paid their rent, haven't made their mortgage payment, and now once the moratorium lifts, that means that the landlords and lenders can then pursue foreclosure and ultimately eviction. So, but you got this 2-year backlog of things. So there's like a log jam at the courthouse. Well, we're seeing it already in the 3rd month of the new year. These pre-foreclosures and foreclosures starting to come through the system. So now that the log jam, if you will, is unclogged, we're starting to see more and more of the normal circumstances where people are in foreclosure and in eviction status if they're renting. And I think I read something yesterday that about 3,000 people every day are getting notices of default and ultimately heading into foreclosure. So as things kind of get back to normal, you're going to see this portion of homes that are ultimately going to be foreclosed on. And so you have opportunities as a real estate investor when that happens. And so kind of gave you a lot right in there, but let me kind of step back and kind of parse that out. So pre-foreclosures are very much a hot target for real estate investors. And one of the things that I teach and promote regarding pre-foreclosures is those are prime properties to buy subject to. Subject to is a strategy where you are buying the property subject to the remaining loan which is under the seller's name that the seller has personally signed for, remaining on the property. So the seller is agreeing to give you the property and leave their loan in place, even though they're personally responsible for it, and deed you the property. Now, there are ways that we secure or give the seller measures of security so they can feel good at night. And if you were to fall off the face of the earth, they don't have to track you down. There's a couple of things that we do that are really what make the deal go together and make the seller comfortable. But there's a lot of competition for the pre-foreclosures. A lot of people in the investor world will target pre-foreclosures as a strategy and as a target that they go after for leads and lead generation. So I'm a fan of pre-foreclosures. I'm a huge fan of pre-foreclosures. I think they're great. And there's a lot of them right now, and there's a lot more coming. There's also a lot of competition for those. And so if you're scrolling Zillow and you run across a pre-foreclosure, what does that mean? And what that simply means is that there's been some public notice that the buyer or borrower of the property, not the buyer, the owner of the property, who is the borrower to the bank, they are behind in payments. And so now what do you do? If you can find that buyer or that borrower, then you can reach them and hopefully have a conversation and let them know who you are, what you do, and if they'd have an interest in selling the property, you might be able to help save their credit, save the property from going into foreclosure. And there are some things in our scripting that we teach that you say that really, if it's the right situation, can get them motivated and wanting to move forward with potentially selling you the property subject to. If you're trying to call them, you're probably not going to have much luck. Think about this. You're a person that owns a home. You are behind in your payments. If you're behind in your house payments, pretty good chance you're behind in your other payments. So your credit cards and any other bills that you have, you're behind as well. In that case, you're getting a lot of phone calls. The creditors are calling you, and so you probably aren't answering your phone. So if you're an investor and you're trying to target pre-foreclosures, if you skip trace and you find the owner, you get the owner's phone number, you're probably not going to get the owner to answer. So think about the simplicity there. They're not answering any of the other calls because they think it's creditors calling. They're probably not going to answer yours. So some of the ways to find these pre-foreclosures, or I should say track them, is just to not call them, but figure out ways to text them, maybe put a door hanger on the door if you're local. But ways outside of calling is going to be kind of a very simple piece of advice for the obvious reason they're not answering their phone. But I really want to talk about foreclosures because there is, to me, nuggets of gold in there. I don't care where you live. There are big players at this point all over the country, big players being hedge funds, some of the big wholesalers, if you will, companies like Open Door and Zillow, who were buying for many, many months. They stopped buying, always a chance that they will buy again. But you have some of those big guys, and including hedge funds, that are coming in, and it makes it really, really hard to outspend them for marketing. It's hard to outspend them in direct mail. It's hard to outspend them if they're running TV commercials or radio spots or variation of all of the above, which the big boys and really the big real estate players in every city are doing. So here you come and you want to start targeting foreclosures or targeting any of these properties that are available that might have a good deal in front of it. And that's what you do as an investor. You're looking for the good deals. How do you compete with those guys? And the reality is very simple. You can't unless you're willing to spend a lot of money. So you need to really outsmart the competition, if you will, and it's kind of piggybacking on what they're already doing. So one of the ways that you can find foreclosures and REO properties ahead of the competition is finding the REO agent. So if you go into your local MLS and you pull up distressed properties. REO, by the way, stands for real estate owned. That means the property's gone through foreclosure. The bank has bought the property back or taken the property back, and now they're selling it. So it's real estate owned. It's on their books as a bad loan. It's written off, and now they're ultimately trying to liquidate the property. There are agents in every city that specialize in working with the bank's, what's called their asset manager. The asset manager is the person who's in charge of liquidating the properties. Remember, guys, banks are in the business of lending money. They're not in the business of selling houses. And even though they might be able to make a lot of money on houses, most banks will want to just liquidate, try to recoup their losses, and go on to the next one. When a bank or an asset manager gives a listing to an agent, the agent has 24 hours to put that into the multiple listing service. And within the 24 hours, they will call, they being the agent, call their contacts that are investors. And that's where you want to be. And you want to be the first phone call, ideally, and that doesn't happen overnight. You might have to nurture the relationship. You might have to court those agents, if you will. And I certainly have done that in my time and have done it even recently where I've targeted them and sent them gift cards and made sure that they knew that I want to be their first phone call. And so I've always had a commitment to those agents that specialize in REO or distressed properties that I would be at the property property within 2 hours of them calling. I would present a cash, as is, no contingency, no inspection offer, close whenever they're ready, which is a quick closing. Usually doesn't happen in 3 days, but you promise or promote that you will close as soon as they're ready, and you want them to give you a call. And by the way, when they call you, you have to do what you say you're going to do. You have to get there quickly and make them an offer, and ideally you can make a good offer. But if you make an offer, it gets accepted, and then you can't close, you're probably going to be blackballed pretty quickly from that agent. And so you want to make sure everything that you represent you ultimately can fulfill. But I've learned a long time ago, don't worry if you have the money. If you have the money, if you find the deal, the money's going to come. So a lot of people spend time worrying about where they're going to get their funding. It's valid concern. It's certainly important. But in the meantime, you're missing deals that go by. Go find the deal, make the deal, and then put yourself under the gun to go find the money for it. If you find a good deal, you will find the money. But it starts with getting in the good graces with the REO agents. And again, letting them know that before they put it into the MLS, that you'd love to be able to make an offer and ultimately can perform quickly. And under the circumstances I just described, quick within 2 hours or so of them calling, cash offer as is, no inspections, no contingencies, quick closing, and you'd like to be their first call. They send you the information. You go out, you make an offer. Within the 24 hours that they get the listing, they go to put it in the MLS, but instead of putting it in the MLS as for sale, they put it in as pending because they have a buyer for it. Nothing wrong with that, by the way, as long as it's put in within 24 hours. The good REO agents have their list of investors that they call. They usually don't call one person. They usually will call a couple because they don't know who's going to like the property, who's going to make the best offer, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, they have a fiduciary responsibility to the lender to get the best offer that they can, and so they'll usually call a couple people. So you want to be on that list and ultimately want to be able to perform if you are the one getting those phone calls. I have bought some of the best deals I've ever done through REO agents. They're distressed, they're typically discounted, even in today's market, and it's about getting in the door first. Now, let me give you a very, very valuable tidbit when it comes to not just REO agents, but realtors as a whole. Realtors by law, by code, by ethics, can't say, yes, I know we have the property listed at $150,000. If you offered $140,000, my seller would take that. They can't do that. That's not in the seller's best interest. But what they can do, and I'll specifically discuss REOs, they can guide you if you ask the right questions. It's all in what you say, right? How about everything in life is about what you say? But whenever I get sent out to a property by an REO agent, my questions are, do you mind if I ask if you like the price? Do you feel it's a good price? Typically, REO agents will do a BPO, or it's called a broker professional opinion, which means they'll drive by the property and kind of tell the lender or the bank, the asset manager, what they think the property might sell for. Usually the bank will get 2 BPO, sometimes 3, and then they'll usually list at the high because they can always come down. So even though the REO agent may have given a BPO, the bank still may list it higher just because the agent's BPO came in lower doesn't mean the bank will honor that. So if it's listed higher, your first question to the agent is, do you mind if I ask where your BPO came in at? Did you do a BPO? And do you mind if I ask where it came? And do you like where the bank priced it, et cetera, et cetera? So you're getting just a little detective or a little background work. But what you really want to find out is how the agent can guide the offer. So let's say the house is listed at $150,000, and what the upside is somewhat irrelevant to this part of what I want to share. But if you feel that you've crunched your numbers that 150 is just too high and you're at 140, which I said just a few minutes ago, if you said to the agent, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, thank you for calling me. I got out there. I'm ready to make a cash offer as is, no contingencies, no inspection, can close as quickly as you're ready, and certainly can be at your office today with a signed contract and a deposit. I'm thinking about offering 140. Do you think that your client would look favorably if I were to offer 140? Now, what are you doing? You're not asking them to tell you the answer. You're kind of playing tap dance. You're playing patty cake a little bit, right? Well, they'll say, they might like it. I don't know if they'd love it, but they might like it. And they'll say, well, what if I offered 142? You think they would like that more? Right? Now, listen, some are going to shut you down. Let me be fair. But most of the agents that are REO agents dealing with asset managers and banks are dealing with investors. So their clients as a whole are the investors, not a John Q. homeowner that's looking to pay a retail price and wouldn't know to ask these questions. So because they deal with investors primarily, they understand the nature of investors and the nature of investment properties, and they're usually willing to at least give you some sort of guidance. But most people don't ask for it. Most people don't know to ask for it. Most people don't get any sort of guidance. Any agent I work with, in fact, we just put 3 houses under contract last week with agents. Actually, that's not fair. 2 of the 3 were with agents. I'm always asking the questions. Listen, what does it need? Do you think the price is priced right? Do you think the price fair? Think it's high, low? If I were to put repairs into it, what do you think it would cost? And if I did those repairs and I wanted to relist the property, and I always say this to agents, in particular ones that aren't REO, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Most REO agents don't then go and list properties because that's just not what they do in many cases. But I always want to know what the agent, if I were to relist it, would list it for. And hopefully that they're honest with you, because you may just end up relisting it with them. Now, I've done that before where I fixed them up and relisted it with the agent, and it's not a common practice for me. I don't need an agent to sell my properties. I can sell my own or have people on my staff that can sell them. But at the end of the day, if the agent thinks they're going to potentially get a listing, they're going to give you the number. Well, they would be shooting themselves in the foot if they gave you a fabricated or inflated number. So again, you're just trying to get a handle or feel from what the professionals that you're talking to, what their opinion is. It's just part of your equation, part of what you'll use to make your final decision. So always ask kind of for some guidance without asking for it, right? If I were to offer this, do you think your client would look upon this favorably? Do you think if I came up, whatever the conversation looks like, have some fun. I try to laugh and not make it as serious as maybe it could be, because that shows that we're having some fun. Everybody likes to have some fun, but ask those questions and ask what kind of work it needs. Ask how much they think the work might cost. And if you did the work and you want to relist it with them, what do you think they would relist it at, or what would they relist it at? Now, you really got some information now that's really valuable from the realtor, who probably knows the house as well as anybody, minus the seller that ultimately lost it to foreclosure. So play the game a little bit, have a little fun with it. Don't take yourself too seriously when you're doing it, but you're going to get some really, really good tidbits from the realtor if you ask those questions. And so go to the MLS. You can get MLS access in so many places. Find a friend or somebody you know. Heck, you can pay somebody to give you MLS access for a period of time. Find the distressed properties. The agent can set you up with a search that filters out all the retails and looks for just the distressed. My search is just REOs. I just want to look for the REOs. And within the REOs, real estate owned, which means those are fully foreclosed properties, you're going to find a series of agents that their names keep popping up. They're the ones that focus on those distressed properties. Find them and call them and hound them, and make sure you do everything you can. Send them a handwritten note card. Show up at their office with a gift. Do what you need to do so they remember you. By the way, you show up at their office with a gift. I don't know what it is. But you could buy them a gift card. You could certainly buy them a gift certificate to a nice restaurant. You could buy them a wine glass, or just something that's going to make them remember you. You want them to give you a call when they get a property. And again, your promise is you'll be there quickly. Cash offer, as is, no contingent, no inspections, close quickly. Can you be on their call list when they get a property that might fit what you're looking for? And of course, you're looking for everything that has a good deal on it. Once you get that call, you got to perform. If you get that opportunity, don't screw it up and not show up and not make an offer or make some lowball offer that wasted their time, right? You got to get out there and ultimately perform. And by the way, if you think it's priced too high, and you're going to ask the realtor, do you think it's priced high? You think it's priced where it needs to be? What do you think the upside might be if I fix it up? What's it need? How much do you think the repairs are going to cost? You go through all of those questions, and it's just priced too high. You say, look, I appreciate you calling me. It's just, I can't get my numbers to make sense. And so I'm not going to make an offer. I don't want to lowball you or insult you or your client. And please call me on the next one. So you can kind of gracefully exit the deal if you don't feel the numbers are working out. But if you get a hold of them and ultimately you get those opportunities, really encourage you to perform. Otherwise, you may not get the opportunity a second time. But take the information that they give you and really put it to your benefit. They're going to give you really the nuts and bolts of the deal and what they think of it. But most people never take the time to ask them those questions. So they're a wealth of knowledge if you tap into it. So just a couple little tidbits on the foreclosure and how I've had a lot of success in buying these properties through agents directly. And I bought them through agents that have bought them through the REO agent. So the agent I bought them from wasn't an REO agent, but they had a relationship with the REO agent. So there's variations, but some good nuggets in there if you take them and put them in play. So happy investing. There's some foreclosures coming down the pipe. 2022, I think the second half half, you're going to see a lot of foreclosures. So if I'm giving advice, I'd find the REO agents, get in their good graces, make sure they know who you are. You could pick up 2 or 3 of these deals over the course of the next 12 months. They could change your entire life. You could make more money in 2 or 3 deals than you make in the whole year, and then you may have a career change after that. So anyway, hope you got some good nuggets, and I certainly appreciate you listening. I'll tie it down. This is one more episode of the Real Estate Investors Money Matrix podcast. I'm Scott Ulmer, your host. Always a privilege and a pleasure to be able to share with you guys today, and I hope to see you all very soon. Thank you. I see you've been watching our videos, and I want to give you a big thank you. If you've ever wanted to get into real estate investing, there's never been a better time than now. Click the link below for more information on how you can work with myself and my team, or visit pinkaffiliates.com. That's pinkaffiliates.com. We have a variety of options for you to get started at whatever level you are interested in. Click the link below, visit pinkaffiliates.com, and see what Pink can do for you.